Hi, I'm Erin Power.
And I'm Laura Rupsis.
We're certified health coaches, and this is Health Coach Radio.
This podcast is about the art, science, and business of health coaching.
We share our insider tips to help you become a better coach and entrepreneur.
And we interview expert guests to discover how they've made it in this growing field.
It's time for health coaches to make an impact.
It's time for Health Coach Radio.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Health Coach Success Virtual Masterclass. My co-host Laura and I worked hard to pull together this special online event just for you. It's a 5-day mini course in which we interview the best and brightest health coach and marketing experts on the planet to try to understand how they've become such great coaches and entrepreneurs. Included in the 20-plus expert interviews are some names you might recognize. Primal Health Coach Institute founder Mark Sisson, celebrity nutrition expert and New York Times bestselling author J.J. Virgin, author, cardiologist, and staunch health coach advocate Dr. William Davis, Michelle Liotta of Health Coach Power Community, Michelle Norris, CEO of Paleo FX and ID Life Nutrition, and many, many more. The Health Coach Success Virtual Masterclass is now available and totally free for a limited time. Check it out at primalhealthcoach.com/success. Today's guest is the legendary Dr. Anna Cabeca. She's an OBGYN, women's health thought leader, and author of 2 best-selling books, The Hormone Fix and Keto-Green 16. Dr. Cabeca has worked with thousands of women one-on-one to help them understand and improve their health and manage their hormones. She's committed to supporting women so that they can thrive physically, emotionally, sexually, and even spiritually as they go through their natural and inevitable life shift of menopause. She teaches her patients to tackle a host of symptoms: fatigue, depression, weight gain, loss of libido, hair loss, and more, shining a light on this time of change and sharing truths and finding solutions to restore vitality and joy. Pretty good stuff. Remember that our show notes can always be found at primalhealthcoach.com/radio. We'd love to have you screenshot your podcast player and tag us on Instagram at Health Coach Radio, and we'll tag you back. If you work in the realm of women's health, you've got to check out this episode and Dr. Cabeca's website, which features tons of women's health-oriented programs for you to learn from. Have a look at drAnnaCabeca.com. Without further ado, here comes an info-packed interview with Dr. Anna Cabeca. Welcome to the show, Dr. Anna. So excited to have you. How are you doing today?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. Lots of fun stuff we're going to dive into during this conversation, and we're going to keep it real fluid, real conversational. We would love to start by hearing from you, your origin story. What got you started in your line of work, and what was some of the trajectory of that, and where are you now? Just give us sort of your sort of condensed speaker bio, if you will.
Yeah, no, happy to. I really have loved medicine. I knew very early I wanted to be a physician, a healer, really. And it took me on a journey where I specialized in women's health, in gynecology and obstetrics. And I trained at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And because I was National Health Service Corps scholar, I was really blessed to get a scholarship to medical school. And part of payback is to go to a rural area or inner city area. And so I ended up in this small little area in Southeast Georgia. I had a clinic in McIntosh County, which is a beautiful shrimping village. And I really had to learn to get creative and certainly practice economical medicine, right? Not everyone had insurance. Not everyone could afford medications. Not everyone could afford surgery. And so that helped me really kind of even dig back into my roots even more in food as medicine, just growing up with a family where it was like, well, dandelion tea helps with blood sugar, and olive oil rub on your belly helps with, colitis and colic, and different things that I learned as I grew up just was second nature. And so that was an insightful. But then at age 39, I'm running a medical practice, a medical spa, doing research, and running a family. And I burn out. I struggled. I was diagnosed with early menopause and infertility, and I failed multiple rounds of infertility treatments. This is definitely after a personal trauma and very stressful time in our lives. And when you're given a diagnosis, when you give a diagnosis as a physician, that's a diagnosis. It's not like, here, we're going to reverse this early menopause. Here, we're going to reverse this infertility. Here, you're labeled. Well, that time of my life, I looked in my doctor's bag, one of the best trained docs and I would say in the country, and my doctor's bag was empty. I was devastated. And that took me on a journey around the world looking for answers. And as a result, learning more traditional medicines, herbs and food as medicine. And I spoke with some of the world's most amazing healers, from a Native American shaman to an Indonesian medicine man, and a Andean philosopher, and a Brazilian physicist, and some of the world's leaders in medicine. It was really fascinating. And all serendipitously, I say God's hand was in my journey every step of the way. And as a result, I reversed my early menopause, and even better, I became pregnant naturally, conceived and delivered a healthy baby when I was 41 years old. Her name is Ava Marie, and she's just amazing, totally amazing. And so that's part of my journey. So yeah, it was really, really good. And with that, implementing these practices that I learned back into my medical practice, incorporating additional functional medicine training. And I was already, specialized in bioidentical hormones, but to realize that it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. And that journey, further served me. But yet at 48, I started struggling again. I was burnt out. Now here I was, a single mom, head of household, prime supporter, single mom and dad to my girls. And, I was burning out fast for my business, because when you practice this way, you can burn out, right? Especially your OCD and workaholic. At least that was me. That was certainly my personality. And I had to solve every problem that walked through the door, whether they wanted it solved or not. And so I did burn out. And as a result of that, hitting a second menopause at 48 and really struggling. And that's where my, discovering my keto-green way, what I call my keto-green or keto alkaline method, and nutrition and lifestyle regimen really helped pull me out of that time period, to go from near broke to a very, very successful, service-oriented, balanced business.
Wow. There's just so much in there. I can't wait to dig into all of it. The thing that I find the most refreshing too is your willingness as a medical practitioner and a board certified doctor to look beyond just the prescription drugs and medical intervention, and that whether it's diet or lifestyle, and using that to fix your hormones without having to necessarily use hormones, or certainly not only hormones, to kind of reverse this. This is right in the wheelhouse for health coaches.
Yes.
Because we don't have your background, that none of that we can do, but we do have so many other tools that can be an adjunct to anything else a client might be working with. So I would love to dig into that a little bit, about kind of where your research came from, and some of the protocols that you like to use, and where that fits in, and how you, balance that with the clinical side, with the medical side.
Yeah, and I'm really excited. I love working with coaches. In fact, one of my firstborn daughter, Amanda, she is studying to be a health coach right now.
Oh, yeah.
And the thing is, that's her next step, is to be a health coach. But she recognized, and that's probably, I encouraged her, you might get a bit frustrated in the medical space, especially doing what we do, and you can do a lot more, at least in this leg of the journey, as the next right step, as a health coach. So she's excited. She's doing fitness training right now, and then she definitely going into health coaching. So I'm excited.
Oh my gosh. That is what's interesting. Just a little side note there, in my role here as admissions director, I talk to a lot of doctors and a lot of sort of licensed clinical practitioners who want to be able to broaden out what they can do because of the licensure, right? And because of the regulation. I think health coaches, to a certain degree, feel that they are limited in what they can do because they're not licensed and because we're not regulated. And so, what does that really mean? When in reality, in many ways, it's much more freeing. I have a lot of doctors coming this way looking to also provide coaching, because it opens up their practice to be able to go beyond their state. or be on their specialty and be able to do so much more. This is tide is starting to turn. Whether it's doctors that are offering this and looking to make a switch, or looking to employ health coaches or start referring to health coaches to kind of pick up some of that, the ball there a little bit.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
and I think it goes to a little bit of what we were talking about earlier, is just, especially as physicians, like, kind of hitting the wall sometimes with patients, and just igniting change, convincing them that it's, what's possible in their life. And that I always tell everyone, every, elite athlete has a coach, right? To be better, I have coaches, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every elite athlete has a coach. So even the best in the business has coaches. So, and that's important for our clients to realize this is there's a reason we hold accountability, we hold space, we see things objectively, and can really make transformation happen.
Yeah. So yeah, there's so many things we can talk about. I want to start by just diving into who you help. So you went through menopause twice, aren't you lucky?
Third time. I know. I think I'm
Third
in my
time.
Right. Yeah. Reversed them both times. They were just too early. I'm 53 with a 12-year-old.
Oh, I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated by reversing menopause. I'm actually fascinated about menopause in general, because as a woman in my 40s, I'm now going through this kind of, what do we want, maelstrom of hormonal shifting that is perimenopause. So talk to us about who you work with. Is it the menopausal, perimenopausal woman?
It's really, honestly, pre, during, and post menopause. And so that covers a large range, but definitely during the times of hormonal transition. That's where that's my love, because this is where things can go a couple different ways, right? We can suffer, struggle, power through, because we are so capable of doing that, right? That's things we've learned to do. Or we can, fix the underlying issue that's causing us to be symptomatic, because, once we do that, very clearly, very easily, all these symptoms go away. For me, in both situations, a little different cause. First one, post-traumatic stress, instant trauma, instant menopause, right? Instant infertility. Like, of course, when you're like anyone really struggling with stress, your reproductive hormones drop off, and your mother hormone, progesterone, is sucked dry, so to speak. Cortisol, the robber of hormones, if you want to give it, it can be a good thief and it can be a bad thief, but too much, too long, it's really a wicked thief, and it robs us from the neuroprotective hormone progesterone. So we experience more PMS, more anxiety, more of these neurologic symptoms, not just the menstrual irregularity, the heavier than normal bleeding, the irregular cycles, which I'm seeing rampant right now, and definitely hearing women having much more difficult time with their menstrual cycle. I get that. I know why. And so, but the neurologic symptoms as well, the anxiety, the irritability, the difficulty sleeping, all of those are neurologic symptoms. So when we, our neuroprotective hormone, our most neuroprotective hormone, progesterone, as that gets either shunted to cortisol, we're not producing enough because we have decreased ovarian function, or in menopause, there are many reasons, but certainly stress, one of the biggest culprits, is going to deplete this mother hormone, and then our reproductive hormones are struggling. So anytime during transition, it can be in your, PMS is in our 20s, puberty, right? But definitely in this perimenopause. But what's really unique to this perimenopausal time that you're referring to right now too, as you're experiencing, it's get easier. It does get easier. There is life. The Japanese, I just learned this, the Japanese calls menopause, the word is, I think it's konenki, and it means second spring.
Oh,
that sounds so much nicer.
Delightful.
So much nicer. Like, yes, second spring. Yeah, that's what I'm in. I'm feeling better. I wore spring colors just to commemorate that. Right? Not black. No, heck no. Right? Second spring. And so what happens during this time, and this is what I really write, in my books, and especially this a new book that I have coming out, because it just blew my mind as I started to understand like why the Keto-Green way. It's like I got this, why it really, really helped me with clarity, memory, mood. And certainly, right, we got the weight loss down, but what about those? And what happens is as we enter this perimenopausal time shift, right, our progesterone levels are declining as well as estrogen and testosterone. And so we get this period of neuroendocrine vulnerability. And I really say it spans 20 years, age 35 to 55, but you enter and leave at different times. And so this neuroendocrine vulnerability, and what we know from science and brain imaging right now, that our brain uses glucose for fuel first and foremost. When enough circulating glucose isn't available, we shift to ketones. And so glucose utilization in the brain is estrogen dependent, but the curve drops like progesterone decline. And so if we can consider that, right, consider that fact that in this transition that our brain's kind of starving for fuel. And that's why we have to switch to, do these practices that get our body into ketosis, burning fat for fuel, producing ketones naturally. And that makes a huge shift. And when we do that, all our reproductive hormones improve because we're stabilizing insulin, we're improving cortisol. It makes a huge difference. And that for me, that had given me from brain fog, memory loss. I thought, I can remember my kids' names and, hey. And to a point of such clarity, I've written 2 books, created online programs, and rebuilt my business from, I couldn't have done it without these tips and techniques that we write about and that we do.
I think there are so many women who can relate to this feeling of entering into menopause too early, that, are just basically told it is what it is, right? And they're probably just given hormone replacement therapy to kind of stave this off. The notion of being able to reverse that is mind-blowing to me. I love that. And I just have a quick question too, because, everybody listening here, I know at this point has heard about the ketogenic diet and who it's good for, who it's not. And there are conflicting camps about the appropriateness of a ketogenic diet for women. Mm-hmm. Fasting and ketogenic diet. And so there's one camp that talks about how women should not be on a ketogenic diet because it's too tough on the thyroid and you're going to have thyroid problems and blah, blah, blah. And then there's others that are on the opposite camp like you that are just talking about the protection of ketones and other things. So would you mind speaking a little bit to maybe where certainly the counter argument is coming from and what might not be 100% accurate with that relative to what you have seen?
And it can be accurate if you're shunting to cortisol, you're not doing alkalinizing behaviors. There are alkalinizing behaviors like meditation, making love, laughter, playfulness. All of those things are alkalinizing behaviors as well as alkalinizing foods. If you're not doing that, you're going to increase cortisol. We know cortisol can disrupt the thyroid. So in everyone that I've worked with, I've not seen thyroid disruption, not at all. And so what we've now since, been running my online program, Magic Menopause, for thousands of women since I guess I'm going on five years now, actually. And time flies. And and what I've seen are improvements in thyroid, including myself. Like, so initially I was able to wean off thyroid meds completely. And then I had some mold toxicity and then back on, but a fraction of a dose that I was on before. So I know that, at least personally, and that made me investigate into my clients, looking at their TSH, free T3, reverse T3, and what were those numbers, and all of them were very healthy and improved, and especially we saw an improvement in TSH. So that's reassuring. And not just that, I always I have my clients in my Magic Menopause program chart their basal body temperature. And so I've had one woman, she does it periodically, like every couple months she'll do her basal body temperature, but over the years now that she's been following my program, her basal body temperature, and she's in her 60s, 65 years old, her basal body temperature rose from 96.2 to 98.4. I mean, that's like 2 points. I mean, that's huge. What does that mean? It means a better functioning thyroid, a better metabolism, an increased basal metabolic rate the older she's getting. How cool is that? right? So I'm very skeptical, but I would also say if you do keto dirty, you know,
Yeah.
you get what you deserve. No, I'm so, you know, I mean, seriously, if you do keto dirty, I mean, what do you think? But if you're keto clean, which is keto green, and you're testing, not guessing, to figure out, discerning what works for you, what doesn't, that's life-changing. That's transformational. And so, yeah, I haven't seen that happen in anyone that's following my program.
Yeah, the nuance of that is important. I think anytime we
Yes.
start talking in platitudes and just like generalities, like keto's bad for women, it's like there's a ton of nuance you have to unpack from there. So what I'm hearing you say is that we have to factor in the ketogenic diet approach with the appropriate types of food, the appropriate types of lifestyle inputs as well. It all plays a role.
Right. And this is where, you know, coaches really come in, because it's never just one thing. As physicians, we're like, well, here's your prescription. See you next year. And, but it's not, it even with diets, according to science, 93% of diets fail, right? 93%. And why is that? No, because it's not just about what we eat. I mean, we have to consider about what we ate, or how it was treated, or what it was sprayed with, you know, or, you know, glyphosates, or, you know, pesticides, herbicides. I mean, those are all huge hormone disruptors. Those are going to knock your thyroid out, right? And increase your risk for breast cancer, without a doubt. But if we're eating animal meat and they've been injected with antibiotics, well, that's killing off our first line of defense. So it's not just about what we eat. I mean, we have to consider what we ate, and also how it died. Stress hormones, we don't want those in us. And the other part too, when we eat, right? Who we're eating with. If they're stressing us out, that's not good for digestion.
Yeah. You know, I work in the metabolic space specifically. It's interesting because I've worked in this space for about 10 years. So I started, you know, in my 30s with women in their 30s, and now we're all kind of aging into our 40s, and it's like, whoa, my metabolism's all out of whack now that I'm going through perimenopause. I'm getting this belly fat and my energy's down. And so years and years and years ago, and you just jogged it for me, I had read somewhere the connection between cortisol and progesterone and insulin and estrogen, how there was like, there was some cousin type relationship with these hormones that wasn't really talked about. So I just think it's really interesting, even the way you described, you know, addressing the underlying cause of symptoms of perimenopause or menopause, because I think women believe it's just, this is it. This is menopause. I'm going to get these hot flashes. I'm going to be awake at night all night. I'm going to, you know, I'm not going to have any sex drive. Everything's going to dry up. I'm going to get this abdominal pooch. So it's really interesting and empowering as well to imagine that we can get to the root cause of these symptoms.
Yeah, and even with hot flashes, a symptom that has plagued some of my clients for 15, 20 years, to be able to get rid of those in a couple weeks, it's amazing. Because again, it takes more than hormones to fix our hormones, hence my book, The Hormone Fix, right? It takes more than hormones to fix our hormones. So what's happening in these women that have, you know, either been on or not been on hormone therapy, why are they still experiencing this without going into high levels of estrogen or something else? Or my clients with breast cancer who can't use hormones. But so what's happening? And this really made me, first, when I saw the incredible, I think we had 90% improvement of hot flashes in my first group within 2 to 3 weeks. And I was actually stunned. And so I started digging in, because I know we're just mastering our major hormones. And so insulin resistance is a reason for continuous hot flashes. And I had it, but it makes perfect sense now but I hadn't studied that. I wasn't aware of that, but there's a great research looking at that. So insulin resistance. So quickly becoming insulin sensitive just shifts that tremendously. And I kind of have this analogy for hormones. And, you know, I wanted, as a gynecologist, to believe that, you know, it's all about estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, and even DHEA, right? But, you know, especially after spending some key years of my life studying it and hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? I wanted to be all about those reproductive hormones. But the truth is, it's not. Those hormones are important, but the ones I mentioned and hundreds of others consider them to be the, you know, college students in the university. So they're the college students. Each one has their own individual giftings and they work together. And then you have the professors of the university. Well, these are cortisol and insulin. And they help direct, guide, shove, move, you know, and they can be, so they're guiding at the head of the classroom. So cortisol and insulin. And then the dean of the university, the most powerful figure for this university with overarching support and guidance is oxytocin. It's oxytocin, the hormone of love, bonding, and connection. And when all is good, everyone else is kind of chill and in good space too. But when, like there's a mutiny and cortisol's taken over, I mean, there's mass chaos. That's my analogy.
I like it. I'm obsessed with oxytocin right now. I think it might be the next necklace I get. I'm wearing a melatonin necklace, but I might get an oxytocin one next.
Definitely. Oh, I'm going to have to get one too.
Well, okay. I want to pick your brain real quick on one thing.
But wait, I just have a flashback because you were that girl in high school. I know you were because I was too. And like we had algebra shirts. I had complicated equations across them, right?
Oh, yes. Yes. But I want to dive in just really quickly, like mechanistically, just very, very briefly. I know this is probably a dissertation you could give, but what is the relationship between insulin resistance and hot flashes? Because when I was insulin resistant in my early 30s, I always ran hot. I was always the hot person in the room. Like this definitely predates my, perimenopause expression, but and then one of the weird side effects that came from just becoming insulin sensitive is, I'm a normal temperature now. I don't overheat all the time. Like, what is the relationship there?
That is a really good question. And I really am not 100% sure how that plays out physiologically. So I have my theories because, we know that insulin is going to affect progesterone, affecting our mother hormones. So is that affecting, but it's also complicated because if we're insulin resistant, we're also running higher cortisol, potentially higher glucose than higher cortisol. And cortisol can definitely affect our temperature through affecting our thyroid. Is it part of that phenomenon? So I'm not 100% sure that mechanism, just that theory that it's affecting our, our internal thermostat. Yeah. But it is fascinating to think about. And it's that kind of complex. Like I have to do things in visual. So I look at, how cortisol can create mutiny. So what happens when insulin's creating mutiny, right? When it's like shouting the loudest and, it's having a hard time getting in. It's like, it's, this havoc in our body. I just think there's just an underlying inflammation that can occur.
Right.
Is that the part of it? Is there like a subclinical inflammation that triggers those hot flashes or that heat? So I think a good question.
Yeah. But what's interesting is
let me know when you find the answer.
Yeah. Academically, it's fascinating. But at the end of the day, even if we knew the answer, does that really change how you treat it?
Yeah.
Right. Or what the steps would be, how you fix it. Right.
It's like the placebo effect. I don't actually care why. I'm thankful that it corrected itself.
But it works, right? If we can moderate insulin production and we can moderate cortisol and promote and support, maybe it's progesterone, then things seem to even out. So do you mind speaking a little bit to kind of what you're seeing clinically with people, and then how you're helping them address that through dietary interventions, lifestyle, things that a health coach can help with?
Yeah, definitely. So typically what I see, and this is as a gynecologist, I'm going to give you the standard of care model, and then I'll say how I shifted as I've learned what I've learned. So standard care model, what we see over time, women coming in their late 20s, early 30s, complaining of increasing PMS. Premenstrual syndrome. So anxiety 1-2 weeks before their period starts and having more irritability. So the standard medical practice may be, well, since it's just for 2 weeks, let's give you, a SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Let's just give you Prozac, Celexa, Zoloft just for those 2 weeks, and let's see how you do. Whatever, Buspar was really big at that point. And we'll give you that just for those 2 weeks out of the month and see how you do. Well, then the patient comes back in and says, well, I'm now having trouble. Having my periods are irregular. I'm having more cramping. It's really now like all month instead of just 2 weeks out of the month. And so the next rule of thumb would be, okay, well, here is some birth control pills. And this I always say, and I do tongue in cheek, but not really. And I always tell clients the symptoms of hormone imbalance is if you only hate your husband 2 weeks out of the month, then it's probably more likely your hormones, not only your husband, right? And so, but it's so true. You can just pinpoint that. That is not something for any males to say, but for women, we can say that. And so there's that. So birth control pill is the next thing. Well, the patient comes back into the gynecologist having ovarian cyst or continued pain, discomfort, doesn't like how it makes her feel. Now she has no sex drive. Of course, we shut down ovarian production of testosterone quite sufficiently at that point, but no sex drive. And so, the next option is, well, let's just go ahead and do an endometrial ablation if you're still having bleeding issues, or we'll take the uterus out if that doesn't work. And since you're over 35, while we're there, we'll just remove your ovaries so you have that very reduced risk of ovarian, minimally reduced risk, I should say, of ovarian cancer.
Wow.
So then what's happened at this state? So the patient comes back, I'm still having memory issues. I'm having brain fog. I don't even, remember the last time I had sex, and I don't know if that's a memory issue or a function of relationship issues. And the next thing is, you're writing a referral to psychiatry and a divorce attorney, and that's the approach when we can see that happen over time. Now, what happened? We never addressed the underlying issues. As a result of my journey, I started looking at this differently. So when patients came in and they're complaining of PMS, early perimenopause symptoms, they fill out my questionnaire. Like, okay, we're going to detox you. So no white, no wheat, no sweet, very little red meat. If you can pick it, peel it, fish it, hunt it, milk it, grow it, for the most part, you can eat it. Now it's my Keto-Green plan really quickly. Let's get Keto-Green. And I may or may not, they're in their 30s. I probably support them with my adrenal adaptogenic formula, Mighty Maca Plus. And I tell them to come back in for your lab results in 4 weeks. And so they come in for their lab results and Dr. Anna, I am feeling 90% better. I didn't realize how bad I was feeling till I started feeling good again. And my 36-year-old client, Zendi, said, my daughter came, sat in my lab. She goes, Mommy, you're smiling again.
Aww.
How cool, right? So that's my 30-year-old client. No different in my 40-year-old in that perimenopausal time period, except, and they're going to come back in, I'm going to tweak them with always like 2 supplements that I make sure my clients are on: omega-3 fish oil, Mighty Maca Plus. And, they're symptomatic and having irregular cycles. I'll use progesterone, bioidentical progesterone. I created a formula, progesterone with pregnenolone, those neuroprotective hormones, because that's what worked best for me. And I wanted a clean formula. So I have that, or oral progesterone at night to help you get a good night's sleep. And that can just change your life. You're getting a good night's sleep, and that will make a huge difference. That, and of course, it's the dietary and lifestyle approach that makes the difference. And then fine tuning it from there. And the same with my menopausal patient, addressing with even more bioidentical hormones, certainly using Julva. So anti-aging cream for the vulva that has DHEA and DHEA and plant stem cells from the alpine rose. And that helps for vulvar vaginal dryness, the accidental urinary leaks. All of a sudden intimacy is better, because you're not powering through and having pain every time you do something. So, honestly, why would you want to? So you remove these and urinary tract infections and vaginal discharge and vaginal odor, these things that really affect our quality of life as we get older. And so we're working through lifestyle and natural interventions to, number one, avoid surgery, avoid prescriptions. I mean, I used to do 2 to 3 surgeries per week. I went to referring out 2 to 3 surgeries per year for major surgery. That's it. That's how powerful our body is to, resuscitate itself, honestly, to rejuvenate itself. And, and I see that happen over and over and over again. So,
wow. What a startling difference between standard of care and not only just the I guess evasiveness of the difference in protocols, right? But the expense, the emotional and psychological drain of someone that has to go down that standard of care path compared to kind of the direction you're taking them. And also, I don't know, I don't know how Erin would feel, but me speaking as, if I were your patient, how much more empowered I would feel in handling my own care and working with my doctor instead of just kind of being told what to do and passively accepting what's happening to me just because I'm getting older. And we see a parallel to this in health coaching. I don't care whether we're talking about menopause or not, but people just accepting illness as they get older because that's what happens when you get older. And it's just not true. So thank you for sharing all that.
It's so extreme to me. The first thing you mentioned was, okay, so a woman in her 30s comes in with increasing PMS symptoms and she gets put on an SSRI. It's like, what? That's wild. Like, I admittedly haven't been to the doctor in a very long time, but things like that make me definitely discourage me from doing so.
Well, I was actually speaking with a neuroscientist the other day, and she shared quite openly that she was, starting to experience in her early 40s, like 42, 44, some of these symptoms, PMS, some of the, the weight gain, and just wasn't liking how she felt. So she went to her doctor, and her doctor put her on birth control pills. And I was like, whoa, you're a PhD neuroscientist and you're on birth control pills. And, first of all, I honor anyone's decisions based on the information they have to be able to make for themselves. I said, well, I, certainly would have done something different. I wouldn't, if you don't need birth control pills for birth control. And if you needed birth control, we would be doing some non-hormonal birth control, like a Paragard IUD or something. But okay, besides that, this is progestins. This is a synthetic progesterone that will have an adverse effect on your cardiovascular profile, on your, brain. So, and on your breast. So what if we switch to a bioidentical hormone? And the resistance was, well, I know, I have a relationship here with my doctor, and, I'm comfortable with her recommendation. I'm like, absolutely, do what's fine for you. But for me, that blew, really, like, I think, because I've been doing this now for almost, 30 years, like, 20 years in bioidentical hormones. So that blew my mind. Honestly, it blew my mind that we're still doing this today to our patients. We're still doing this today to our patients. You can still go in, have PMS, and get birth control pills as a solution. Girls are getting started on birth control pills at a young age. Puberty is not a disease. Menopause is not a disease. We can't suppress our transitions. Our transitions are rewiring for a reason.
Yeah.
So I, it's so true. It broke my heart. And then it was hard for me because I just wanted to run through a litany of options and alternatives. But when you have a client, how do you coach someone when they don't want to listen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I had this question come up from a client of mine last week or so. She was asking me, about her fitness routine, for example. She's like, she was complaining because she was doing all this fitnessing and it wasn't working. And I said, okay, tell me what you're doing. And it was a lot. It was just a lot of intensity and frequency. And she said herself in the coaching sessions, she said, this used to work for me. This worked for me forever. And suddenly it's not working anymore. Is it because my changing body needs a changing exercise prescription? And I said, yeah, I would say so. What do you think about that?
Brilliant. Absolutely. And I love that you came to that conclusion. Just like anything, the same thing, the same food, as awesome as it is, the same thing every day is going to lose its effectiveness.
Yeah.
So we have to change things up, right?
Yeah. Is there a certain type of movement that's more supportive of a perimenopausal or menopausal woman, though?
Well, definitely we have to look at what's happening cortisol wise. And also when that, especially those high intensity interval training, again, progesterone's declining. And so we're still pushing without honoring a regeneration of our adrenals per se. And that's typically in that perimenopause, especially those of us that are really, really driven. Right. So we're burning the candle at both ends, and what's going to give. And this is where I definitely use bioidentical progesterone to help with that adrenal support. So like both ways, using adaptogenic support, and then shifting, like, okay, well, if you're doing 3 days a week HIIT, let's do 3 days a week of stretching, yoga, going for a long walk. You've got to balance your cortisol. And before you go to work out, and when you're finished, reset your physiology and stay in this hyped up level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard for women who've spent their whole lives being kind of fitnessy to recognize that has to change. I know. But just to recognize it has to change, it's an incredibly big mental hurdle for them to go through. Yeah. It's like, but if I slow down, I'm going to get fat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I don't feel like I'm working hard enough, Yeah. I mean, I own a CrossFit affiliate that I soon will be selling because I'm moving. fingers crossed. But even like, I will often tell many of my members who are there like 5-6 days a week and they start to plateau and they're not recovering and all these things. I'm like, well, you're here too much. You know, I don't do a quote unquote high intensity Metcon more than 3 times a week ever. And I don't do them back to back ever. And the other times I'm still moving. I've really started to just prioritize strength training, but in a way that isn't super high intensity. I'm just moving my muscles and I'm demanding that my muscles move and work. The idea to kind of sustain lean muscle mass and insulin sensitivity. I mean, I'm 49. I just turned 49. So it's kind of like, I know, and I see it in my clients, this like low carb tolerance for carbohydrate now. It's past a certain age and insulin resistance increasing. And this is what we're trying to sort of stave off. But, you know, I see it in myself and I'm trying to encourage my members, and we're even changing things in our gym where we've got open gym time now. We're trying to encourage like programming in mobility to be bigger chunks of the day, because we see it all the time. So when injury happens,
Right.
you know, and that's just in like a younger group. You know, add in the fact that you've got people that are women that are now in this kind of delicate time period where it's a delicate hormonal balance, and we need to pull sort of every tool out of the toolbox, right? Because unfortunately, our environment right now is not a natural environment. It just isn't. It's an artificial environment, and we're surrounded by a lot of things that are working against us. We have to actively make choices, and we have to actively exhibit behaviors that sort of work in that favor. You know, I want to kind of circle back, if you don't mind, on birth control, because gosh, I was on it for decades, you know, hormonal birth control for decades. And my daughter is 19. I hope she's probably never going to listen to this, so whatever. But, you know, she came to me asking to be on it. And I know that hormonal birth control is not harmless. And so I took her into the doctor for the doctor to explain to her what some of the side effects could be, and, you know, the impact of being on hormonal birth control. And she basically just told her it was harmless, you know, okay. But, you know, for someone like her, I'm battling not just this decision, I'm also battling the fact that she's 18 years old and is not responsible, right? She's not. Yeah. So, you know, as far as alternatives, but I would love, if you don't mind, speaking to hormonal birth control, the impact this has on the body, what might be a better, more effective way, and how do you balance that with some of this younger generation that, you know, they can just be really fly by the seat of their pants, right? They don't always think critically about this stuff.
Exactly. I have 4 daughters. I hear you. I hear you completely, you know, and it goes into, and, you know, and their friends, parents do things differently than I do for the most part. Right. But let me tell you, this is a part that's anguishing. But what I do recommend, and this is Jolene Brighten, says it the best, naturopathic doctor, Jolene Brighten. She wrote her book, Beyond the Pill. And I love her book, and I love Nicole Jardim's The Period Fix. And, but beyond the pill, Jolene really makes an emphasis. Look, there are times when we need to use birth control, right? It's the best option for us, but it's also, we need to be well consented. We need to be well consented. So your daughter was not well consented, because we do know that while it can decrease your risk of ovarian cancer, it can increase your risk of breast cancer. It can also increase your risk of blood clots and coagulopathy and cardiovascular issues. We know this, and you know, it's well established. Also, it affects our hypothalamic pituitary axis, and also can affect, of course, we know mineral absorption, magnesium depletion, B vitamin depletion. And these are real things. But again, sometimes it is the next right step. I look at options, and I definitely have done this with one of my daughters that, you know, couldn't do the non-hormonal IUD. We went with the Skylar IUD. So it is progestin, synthetic progesterone. But I also, you know, multivitamins, and try to counteract that progestin. But that is a safer option than oral hormones. Oral hormones are metabolized by the liver and create an inflammatory cascade. We know this. That's why we don't give women, or at least we shouldn't be giving women certainly over age 55, oral estrogens. It's an inflammatory, increases our inflammatory markers. So why is it okay when we're in our 20s? And so But I feel for you because, and I think I had peace of mind with that, that IUD. I certainly did. It's not going to rely on remembering either. And it's safer. So like, what's my next best thing? Now I like Paragard IUD, non-hormonal IUD. It is safe, and it is, one of the best forms. I've used it in between children and everything else. I've used for myself and thousands of patients of mine. I really, when I can convince someone to do it, I think it's the next best thing to, and it's reversible, completely reversible. And that's kind of what we want. You never know in a person's life when they might change their mind and say, I do want to have children. So it's a nice thing about that. And I think that with birth control, I think we really have to do better job at informed consent, because the doctors don't know. I mean, honestly, I guarantee you, we're so busy in medical practice. We have 5 minutes with a patient. Insurance companies are breathing down our neck. Drug reps are giving our clients free samples and advertising the wazoo out of them. So patients are coming in asking for medications by name, and I think that's, that's definitely a big challenge that we have with our clients, and then shifting the mindset. So, these resources can really make a difference in our lives.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Can you give us
switch, or just in birth, just when we can switch and take breaks in birth control, that's ideal, when we can be responsible, to do that if we're not using it, certainly if we're not using it for birth control. And if there are still times that we can take breaks and use, secondary protection, condoms, and be very good about that. That can definitely give our bodies a break too.
Yeah.
I was on the same one for 23 years. Just didn't even dawn on me that was going to be a bad thing. I think the one that I was on was pretty mild. I don't know, but but I had no information about it. It was literally the prescription thrown at me as a 17-year-old girl. And I think I even got the initial prescription for acne, not even for birth control.
I've had 13-year-olds come in on birth control because they were put, for acne. I'm like, wait a second. Okay. Well, that makes, did you stop the dairy first of all?
Right.
Oh, of course not. Oh, I see. But, there is a real phenomena called post-birth control syndrome. And, especially on birth control pills for a long time, that resumption of ovulation, it's a detox process. And for some people, it's more challenging to come out of than others.
Yeah.
We're not crazy. We're not crazy. And many
No.
people are like, oh, you can't, you get eyebrows raised if you talk about this, but there's again, Jolene Brighten's book, Beyond the Pill. It's good.
Yeah. I mean, it just makes sense that coming off of a long-term medication of any kind, your body has to readapt to the new input. But since we're on this conversation, I would love the Coles notes. I know this is a very, very broad topic, but the Coles notes difference between hormone replacement therapy and bioidentical hormones.
Yeah. So when we talk hormone replacement, we're often talking, that's just a basket term for whatever hormone replacement you're on. Technically birth control pills are hormone replacement, but we're typically, classic ones are Premarin and Provera. And, for example, not identical to what our body produces. The big culprits being the progestins. Progestins are different than our bioidentical progesterone, and Premarin, which has been used and studied, is from pregnant mare's urine, Premarin, pregnant mare's urine. So it's a combination of over 30 estrogens, right? It's just,
oh gosh,
estrogen,
no idea. And predominantly estrone, right? Versus a pure estradiol or estriol. So our body produces many different metabolites of estrogen, but some are safer and some are more dangerous. Estrone, we know, is more dangerous. And so then there's, when we talk bioidentical hormones, and what I refer to, I only use bioidentical hormones, hormones that are identical to what our body produces in chemical structure. Like your melatonin, you wouldn't take a synthetic melatonin, right? You would take a bioidentical melatonin. You know, when we work with infertility, we give bioidentical progesterone vaginal suppositories. I'm not going to use a synthetic form that's available. I would not. Same with testosterone, same with estrogen. We want bioidentical forms. And, you know, as much as, you know, and the same thing, like for thyroid, what do we use? We use a bioidentical thyroid for the most part. Even Synthroid is bioidentical T4. And so, you know, these are all things to consider. Insulin, right? Bioidentical insulin. It's a, you know, that's what we're going to use. Why would we manipulate hormones for women to use synthetic hormones as a symptom relief when we could use bioidentical? That's natural, safer, and, you know, more familiar to our body than anything else. And this is because, you know, we know that there's patenting issues for bioidenticals, and that makes, you know, competition rampant. And so it's true. It's true. It's a true problem in production. So we do rely on our compounding pharmacies. And this is what I tell women. Number one, it takes more than hormones to fix your hormones. So my first book, The Hormone Fix, is number one. Number two, get Keto-Green. Second book, Keto-Green 16, little plug there. And the third thing, ask a local compounding pharmacy. What doctor is doing a great job with their patients with bioidentical hormones? And what are they doing? So when I retired my clinical practice locally, my patients really had a hard time getting prescriptions, but after fighting with their docs, you know, it was, and suffering for a short amount of time, they really demanded, you know, that their compounded prescriptions be fulfilled. And now the other docs, after seeing how much better these patients do, are writing compounded prescriptions. So it's just that, like I tell women all the time, you know, you are your own best advocate. Don't give your power away to anyone else. If something doesn't resonate truth for you, you know, be true to that, honor that.
So that's a great segue. You were just saying, you know, when you basically shut down your local in-person practice, you totally restructured your practice to an online practice. So I know with many, many people going into health coaching, that's what they envision for themselves, right? A practice that is more online to give them greater reach. So could you tell us a little bit about what that was like? First of all, why'd you make the decision to do it? And what were the first few steps you had to take? Like, what were the biggest challenges? What's the best part about it? All of that.
Well, I tell you, I'm in a much better place now, for sure, without a doubt. You know, I'm so much better off, and in numbers of ways. You know, I mentioned at 48, I was struggling and I was burning out. I was burning the candle at all ends, and a single mom, and I was struggling in relationships with my kids, my teenage daughters. I had a young one in the wee beginnings of elementary school, and then a middle schooler and a high schooler. Now, you cannot afford brain fog during that time or manipulation. And I had switched to really a high level concierge practice, but it didn't matter for me if I had, you know, 10 patients, 100 patients, or 10,000 patients. Like if I had a problem to solve, that was my mentality during that, you know, certainly during that time. And, you know, for a workaholic, good physician, I was well rewarded for that. My patients loved me. Now, my teenage girls, however, it was like, when will you stop hating me? And they're like, I don't hate you, Mom. I'm like, it feels like you hate me. You know, I mean, like, what is this? And so it was, I don't know if you went through that with your daughter, Laura, but
Oh, yes.
Oh, man.
Erin knows. Erin knows what I went through with my daughter, but yeah.
I tell you, I still have a 12-year-old. Oh my God. Okay. So, you know, but it was a challenge. I chose God and family first, and I was burnt out. I mean, I really didn't have a choice. I was cycling down. I had to reflate, like, again, perimenopause. And I will intellectualize this as I intellectualize most things, just for simplicity. But during this time, not to take away from all the emotional components involved, but when progesterone is coming down, right, that neuroprotective hormone, there's irritability, brain fog, memory loss, making bad decisions, right? And there's that, you know, you're not sleeping, you're not well rested, and your self-care is being sacrificed. And so during that time and struggling with, all the demands of running a business, it was one thing after another. Insurance companies were coming after me, specifically Blue Cross Blue Shield, because I was ordering vitamin D, injections, and I was taking vitamin D labs and giving B12, even though they weren't, anemic, but, and it was the, federal Blue Cross Blue Shield said, well, that could be considered federal fraud because there's no data to say you should recheck someone's vitamin D level in 2 months. First of all, the lab's billing that. I'm ordering the test. I'm like, of course I'm going to check it because she's a breast cancer patient. Her vitamin D level's 11. We need to get it to 80. And how do I know when it's there? It didn't matter. I mean, it was just,
Wow.
but I say there were some multiple attacks. I was a big fish in a small pond. I mean, I've been doing functional medicine, ordering organic acids. I was a scientist before I went to medical school. I get the physiology. And so, we're still 20 years away from that in standard practice. And this was 2010, 2011. And that I started doing all of that functional testing, even earlier actually. But it was, one thing after the other. I was trying to be a good physician to all my patients and take insurance and also and then I stopped doing that, ran my high level concierge practice. And yet I was still like struggling. I was still burning out. And so it was that decision to, all or nothing. I can't have good boundaries here and I'm still not being the mom I need to be for my children. And in my mind at that time, PTSD was flaring up. My story, we lost a child in 2006, and that, was part of my trauma and part of my grief. And now as a single mom, all that was flaring back up. My ex-husband had a traumatic brain injury. I mean, just name it, right? Like if things could go wrong, it's the book of Job, the book of Anna. So it's that storyline. I mean, it was all of that. And so it was then, recognizing that I was continuing to spiral down. I didn't want to live that way. I didn't want my children to live that way. And I think this is a question that I ask my patients all the time, especially if they have a child. It's like, when your child is your age, what type of health do you want them to be in? What type of life do you want them to be living? And, and if you could go back and tell your younger self something different, what would you tell yourself to, grasp it, take care of yourself, love yourself, right? So I started following that. And that's also when I started with my Keto-Green way, just getting into this lifestyle, that key part, the alkalinization, managing my stress, getting into ketosis, really shifting my physiology. And from there, discovering that, oh my gosh, this worked for me. And then I was like, my clinic was closed, but I incorporated some of my most difficult patients that I had that were, menopausal, difficulty with weight loss and struggling. And so I brought them in for a small group because all of a sudden I felt clearer and more capable during this time. And my memory was back. I brought them in and I started, I just ran them through my program and they did fabulous. So I went online, like that was the transition point. I had done some online programs before, my earlier version of Women's Restorative Health and my other program for intimacy, sexual CPR, which is really a holistic program. So good. We'll talk about that one later. But but now it was the program, I called it Magic Menopause. So I hired a digital marketing team to help me get it on. And I just did, they call fly the plane as you build the plane as you're flying that. Yeah. So I just did weekly meetings. I created each course for the week and pre-sold the program, created each course week by week, and built the Magic Menopause program. And I sold, like initially it was a 6-figure launch. So really that was transformational. And I love doing it. I love seeing the lights go on and it worked. And then I had more clarity to finish a project that I'd been working on for years, which was creating my Julva, my anti-aging cream for the vulva. And I finished that, put that created a product that was signature to me, my needs and my patient base, that nothing is comparable. And so I started using that clinically and in some physician clinics so that trying it out with patients and then bringing that to market. And that's been huge, a huge profit business. And then I love doing my group coaching and, creating that one-to-many model. And in the back of my mind, it's always the same. Yeah, I recognize now that I'm influencing millions, but I don't have to be. But imagine we influence the one that influences millions.
Yeah.
Right? That's powerful. And so I'm always speaking to the one person. And that's where sometimes we try to be too much for too many. If we focus on who is that one person that you're helping. And every day I'm doing my Facebook Lives now, every day I'm speaking to one person,
Mm-hmm.
So powerful.
I have so many follow-up questions. I probably have a million follow-up questions.
Go for it.
But okay, so Magic Menopause, it's an online group program, correct? And so what's sort of the framework? Is it an online course where information is delivered and then you support it with these Facebook Lives, or what is the mechanics of that?
Yeah. So with Magic Menopause, it is weekly courses. There are 7 webinars that are now pre-recorded. And so they launch 1 week at a time. And I run this program once or twice a year now. And because it's live, it takes a higher time commitment from me. Okay, 2 to 3 hours a week from me. But anyway, that's a higher time commitment. And so, so in the group coaching, because I really do, I look at everyone's intake forms, and, I really show up for the Q&A, and we do live questions and answers. And now I actually have 2 coaches that are there in the middle of the week doing live office hours on our Facebook community group. So my coaches take away a lot of the questions that I was answering over and over again. And that way I can just do laser focused coaching essentially when I'm on live with my clients. So I come on live, so they have the classwork with a handout, and so a program module. It's like being in a mini university class in a way. And so they have the download of the self-analysis for the week, each week has a workbook associated with it, because it's step by step. I want to build them up through the program and really create these solid foundations. And then they have their hour-long webinar, and then there's the Q&A with me. And then they have the community group, so that they're in there interacting, and my coaches will be there. Every once in a while I'll pop in. And that's how the program goes. And we do support every member with part of their admission fee includes some of my products, so that they have what they need to get started.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And just so you do an intake form for everybody who enrolls, and you're actually reviewing the intake form, all the specifics of each individual person?
Well, yes. And right now, the way we've set it up for the form, it comes to me in a Excel sheet, so I can see everyone's answers. So instead of having to pull up each form, I get an Excel, so I get to scan, which is.
And so then are you generally addressing common complaints and symptoms? Like, you're not really giving prescriptive information to each individual? Okay.
No, cool. But some clients, sometimes there's a specific email. Look, we should definitely come into the live Q&A. Be sure to raise your hand and ask your questions, because we often get people, sometimes they don't want to share them. Like, there's so much there, there's so much healing in groups, and someone else needs to hear your answer too. And that also gives me, if they're not showing up, I can say, I had a client such and such who had this situation and was doing this. These are some recommendations, but I usually need more information. That's why I like them to come on to their laser coaching, to really, so that I can dig deep. And honest to God, more often than not, they're willing to overshare, which is good.
If you create that space, and they, that I'm sure they view that as their treatment time. And do you limit that group to a certain number of participants?
Yeah, we typically stay around, I think our largest group we've allowed in was 150, and that was,
Yeah, that was a lot. I would imagine too, that intake form at the very least also allows you to identify some red flags of some people that might need something else besides kind of what that group program's designed to do.
Well, one thing I just remembered, mostly it's very similar, but there was one time where someone had a history of renal cancer in one kidney. And so it was like, okay, well, we're going to really need to, these are some labs that I want to make sure you're checking. And how's your omega-3 consumption? Like, we need to preserve that kidney no matter what we do. I mean, it really just does help, bring up the discussion, because oftentimes, like, she'd never been told omega-3s could be renally protective.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, my next question. We're on the countdown here. You have so much stuff going on that it's like we got we got to get through.
All right.
So I want to. Okay, so we understand keto. We understand keto around here. Keto makes sense to us. We understand the mechanism and totally the neuroprotective aspects of it. But the green part, the alkalinizing part, can you just share with us your version of keto, this keto-green protocol?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where it came about, because when I was 48 and struggling and gaining that weight despite not doing anything different, so true, and really restricting carbs, I experienced that keto crazy, like irritable, neurotransmitters off. And so just, hitting my functional medicine roots, checking my urine pH, and I was so acidic. I was as acidic as the pH paper would read. That was a huge aha for me, because then I knew my neurotransmitters were off. My body was inflamed. I wasn't giving it what it needed to be grounded. And so, adding the low carbohydrate greens, the, dark green leafies, our kale, our Swiss chard, our beet greens, our, spinach, all of these really good things can make a huge difference in our life. And then, of course, the cruciferous vegetables. So I started playing with that, getting more alkaline, feeling better, more regular bowel movements, all that stuff that can make a huge difference to our hormonal balance. And then the mornings I'd walk on the beach, I noted I was more alkaline all day. Well, when we're stressed, when we have cortisol, it increases hydrogen ion secretion across the renal tubules, creating a more acidic urinary pH. Well, that's another aha. No wonder. So as I started doing more of the meditative practices, nourishing my body with the alkalinizers, and then pushing into keto, because when we get into ketosis, often we will become acidic. So it's really a discipline and a practice to do both the lifestyle and the nutritional components to maintain a healthy physiology. So that alkaline part is what became the greens, the keto green. So
Cool.
yeah, so it enables us too to do the detective work. We know that we're going to be more acidic when we're dehydrated. We're going to be more acidic when we're stressed. We're going to be more acidic when we have a food sensitivity or toxic exposures. So that enables us to do what I like to call my Nancy Drew detective work, and figure out, okay, well, what's going on that could have thrown me off today? What's happening that's throwing me off? When we start asking those questions, we get the answers.
Do you encourage folks to test their urine pH throughout this program?
Gosh. All the time. All the time. I usually have test strips right here with me. I'm like showing test strips all day. And it's so true. But let me tell you, check, test, don't guess. Urine pH, it's so easy. And you can get pH paper anywhere, any pharmacy. You can just order pH paper and start checking. I created urine test strips with pH pad and ketone pad, so you can actually measure both on one pee strip, which is so nice. And initially check every time you use the bathroom, and just note when are you more alkaline? When are you more acidic? After your workouts, Laura, I know you're going to be more acidic, right? Because you just, have lactic acid. How cool is that, right? We need that stress on the body at that time to rebuild muscles, to have healthy muscles. And then we want to alkalinize, get out that extra lactic acid so that we're rebuilding and restoring. Check your urine pH. How good of a job are we doing? And that for me has been so fun to kind of figure out. And the same thing, what threw me out of ketosis and what didn't. Drinking coffee all morning throws me out of ketosis. It raises my blood glucose, even at black coffee fasting. And I've been, do you guys usually, can't see it right now, I can't show you, the 24-hour monitor,
Not yet. I've been toying with trying that, just out of curiosity.
God. You will love it. You will totally love it. So continuous glucose monitor. This is the Freestyle Libre. I used it in, calculating out all my recipes in Keto-Green 16 and my Keto-Green recipes to keep your blood sugar really balanced. So, and desserts, have dessert too. So it's so fun. It's super fun. And it really helped me see when I started wearing it, the aha moments were, getting on stage to speak, fasting, my blood sugar goes up to 150, baseline 80 to 90. And, just speaking, fasting, 150, a strong workout, 180, 200 with a high intensity boxing workout. the most I've gotten so far. Yoga, maybe it will increase 20, 30 points, really depends. And the coffee increase my blood sugar 20, 30 points first thing in the morning. But if I do my meditation, have a tea, no problem, no increase whatsoever.
I really want one of those. Oh my gosh.
Isn't that great? Oh, you'll love it. I mean, it is such a cool thing. And you don't need to buy the sensors are $40. So for 2, you shouldn't pay more than $80. Do cash pay. It's usually cheaper. You don't want things to run through the insurance company that could be associated with diabetes. Right. So just do cash pay. And what you do, you just use your smartphone and it will read your level. And so you can just see your chart over the last however many hours that you've been watching. So, which is so nice to see, see what's happening in your blood sugar over time.
Wow. So really it's only like $80. Do you just pick it up at the pharmacy?
Yep. Now
pay $80 for it and then download the smart app.
Yep. 80 for 2 sensors. That'll take you 4 weeks, each sensors for 2 weeks. I need a new one. Mine just went out. So it lasts for 2 weeks. And so you get for $80, you get a whole month to see what's happening. And then don't buy their monitor thing. Ridiculous. Just use your smartphone. And the app is the Freestyle Libre app. And you can just see what's happening over time and see what could be sabotaging us. Sometimes it's really cool. Right. Currently though, it is by prescription only. So your physician has to write for it. But again, no diagnosis code is needed and you can cash pay it. So
cool. I'm such a geek with that kind of stuff, just out of curiosity to see how things are affecting my blood sugar. Yeah.
That's
my favorite thing. You got to do it and then share it with me because I totally will geek out with you. And
yeah. So from the standpoint of, so you've got your Magic Menopause, right? Program. You have a few programs.
I do.
Right. And then you also have your books and then you've got your products. So kind of putting our business hat on here real quick before we let you go. One of the big questions I get from people is like, how am I going to make money? And am I going to be able to produce a full-time income? And I do talk to them about the notion of having multiple revenue streams, that you don't have to have all your income coming from one place. So could you speak to that a little bit, just from a business standpoint, as far as, diversification? What do you find you get the biggest bang for your buck? Or maybe it's, hey, I might make more doing such and such, but it requires a lot more of me versus, that kind of stuff. I'd love your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely. And it is the trial and error, because each one will have to figure out, okay, what do I love most? And I love being in mastermind groups and figuring this out too, listening to other people who are, at different parts of their journeys. For me, definitely having a signature product that is selling around the clock without me being there makes a difference. And that's my Mighty Maca Plus and my Vulva. And that has sold by word of mouth predominantly initially. And that was key. But what I did learn, especially with products, is that you need margins to make money on products, because advertising is expensive, legal is expensive, market is expensive. So you really, and that took me a while to learn. And so you really have to have, I think for product development, I created all mine because I was a chemist before med school, but there are great companies, manufacturing companies that you can work with. If you have something that you do and that is so specific to you that you recommend and do, that you want to share with your clients, and then from there, and I typically say, because you can typically start with smaller orders. And so, but creating something that is your signature, that has your signature story, that, is unique to you, creating that solution, whether it's a physical product like, my Vulva or Mighty Maca, or it's a program like Magic Menopause or Briefs Through Menopause, that creates a funnel of people who are listening and liking and working together. I think one-on-one coaching is always really hard because you're selling time for money directly. So you can do a combination, which is one-on-one a certain amount of time a month, but you have your group weekly calls. There's so much therapy in groups, right? And even with Keto-Green 16, it was designed to go into corporate programs, homes, like Bible studies or book clubs, and so that we do it as community together. There's so much healing in community, and especially when you bring food in for the discussion, right? Food, family, fun, all of those good things can really build healing, builds oxytocin. And that's where we get a tremendous amount of healing. So what I've seen work really well in my business is where there's this self-study, like with my Magic Menopause or my Breeze Through Menopause is a free program. And I'll give that to you to give to all your coaches too. It's
Awesome.
Free for 10 days, but I'll give you the lifetime access so they can go through it anytime. And what you do is, you have they get a dropped video. I mean, it's for that 10-day program, it's every day. You could do a 10-week program, one video a week that gets dropped to them. And then you're live to answer questions. That way you're not saying the same thing over and over again. And JJ Virgin was my coach way back 10 years ago.
Oh, she's great.
One of the first coaches. And she said, if you're saying the same thing every time, make it into a program. And that's why when I was just learning, back from my world journey, and I'm telling clients, oh my God, if you do this, that, and the other thing, you're going to just transform your life. Right. And I was saying the same things over. I made it a program, and I created a first hour. It's like that free webinar, and then you upsell the program, that model. But I'll tell you why this is valuable, especially if you're coaching or you're in clinical practice and you're saying the same things. You want your clients to listen. You will spend an hour with that client who is interested, but you don't want to spend even 10 minutes with the one who's not ready to make a change in anything. So like for me, it was, okay, listen to this webinar. It'll take you about an hour, or give them a 20-minute one, and just, we'll talk about it when you come back in. They come back in and didn't spend 20 minutes listening to that. Okay, I'll see you next year. I mean, I can't, because you can't do that.
No.
You can't do that. You will, I burn out. I absolutely burn out with that. You want to help everyone because you see what's going to happen. And so that can be really frustrating. And that just gives you, that creates that healthy boundary. So you're not going to burn out. You work with the people who are there. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Wow. Gosh, you have so much going on. I love that JJ Virgin was your coach, because I adore her. I'm very obsessed with her.
Girl crush.
Big time. Well, we have so much more we could talk to you about, but we're running low on time. So why don't we wrap up by just kind of summarizing where folks can find everything you're doing. Give us a summary of what you're doing. I know I've talked about a bunch of things, but just give us sort of your details.
Oh my gosh. So it's easy to find me. I'm at dranna.com. So like Dranna, DRANNA.com. I love that. I feel like, like a DJ when I say Dranna. Dranna.com. And what else? And so I'm on Instagram at Dr. Anna Cabeca, and on Facebook at Dr. Anna C. And I have a great Keto-Green community. And of course, my book, anywhere books are sold, Keto-Green 16. And honestly, the Hormone Fix, this book is my magnus opus. Everyone needs to read or listen to, because I did the audio.
Oh, good.
Hormone Fix, Chapter 8, the stress chapter, that also shares with you really my personal journey through honestly through hell. And so, there is hope for everyone, let me tell you. And so, and then Keto-Green 16-day plan. It's a great 16-day quick plan designed to work, quickly and well. And we've been running it in my menopausal groups, and they've been doing fabulous. And then of course the younger and older and males do fabulous faster. It's not fair, but it is working for us, and that's what matters.
Yes. Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Anna. We have to have you back on, just because there's so many questions we didn't get to ask, but this has been.
My God. I would love being with you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. Okay.
This podcast was brought to you by Primal Health Coach Institute. To learn more about how to become a successful health coach, get in touch with us by visiting primalhealthcoach.com/call. Or if you're already a successful health coach, practitioner, influencer, or thought leader with a thriving business and an interesting story, we'd love to hear from you. Connect with us at hello@primalhealthcoach.com and let us know why we need to interview you for Health Coach Radio. Thanks for listening.